Warm welcome, dear children. We will again start with our class of biology, and we will start with the gymnosperms today. We completed pteridophytes in the previous class, and when in the beginning we talked about the plant kingdom, we discussed that the plant kingdom is divided into two main categories, that is cryptogamy and phanerogamy. Right, so cryptogams or phanerogams, and cryptogams are those plants which do not bear seeds, right? So they are seedless plants, and under the seedless plants we talked about the thalophytes, that is the algae, we talked about bryophytes, amphibians of the plant kingdom, and we talked about pteridophytes, the first terrestrial plants found, right? So these three groups, they belonged to cryptogamy, or they were seedless plants, right? And now we start with the phanerogams, and under phanerogams we will talk about gymnosperms and angiosperms, and these are seed bearing plants, right? So for today we will talk about gymnosperms, and then there would be one topic, that is angiosperms left. And children, today you will be getting your home assignment, right? So that's a question paper of 50 marks. So you are required to answer that question paper. So in the question paper, I have given a few questions related to angiosperms as well. Although I will not be able to complete angiosperms in this particular lesson, so I will put another video of angiosperms by Tuesday, right? So till Tuesday you just wait, do not solve the biology paper, and after Tuesday, once you see the video and I've explained the topic, then you can continue with the bio paper, right? So today we will talk about gymnosperms, and these are seed bearing plants, right? So phanerogams or seed bearing plants, and the word gymno it means naked. Gymnos means naked, right? And sperma are seeds, right? So they are naked seeds. Naked seeds means the seeds are not covered with any covering. Now whenever we eat some fruits, we find seeds in the fruits, right? So now those seeds are covered by the fruit. But in gymnosperms, we do not find seeds covered with fruits, right? So that is why they are known as, they are naked seeded, right? So they are naked seeded before and as well as post fertilization, right? So they remain like that only, right? So that is why seed, they bear seeds, so they belong to phanerogams, and there is no covering over their seeds, so they are called naked seeded plants, right? Now these are also plants without flowers. That means they do not bear flowers, right? So they are naked seeded and they are flowerless, without flowers, right? So that's about gymnosperms. The basic characteristic about gymnosperms is that they are naked seeded and then they are seeds without plants. Then these are a small group of organisms, right? So they are around 70 genera and 900 species of gymnosperms known, right? So small group, 70 genera and 900 species, right? So these many are known, right? And then they are more ancient than the angiosperms. That means they were formed before the angiosperms, right? So I'll just write this also here, more ancient than angiosperms, right? There was a time when gymnosperms, around 200 million years ago, where the gymnosperms they formed the dominant vegetation on earth, right? So they were the dominant vegetation when throughout these gymnosperms were only found. But today, now if we look at the gymnosperms today, then they are dominant only in cold areas, right? Around 200 million years ago, they were the dominant plants on earth. But today, they are found only in the cold area. So their habitat, where they are found today, are cold areas, right? So hilly areas, cold areas, this is where they are found, right? And in these areas, rain and snow are the only sources of water, right? So sources of water are rain and snow, right? These are what? They are the sources of water, right? As such, no irrigation. So they depend on natural source, that is rain and water, right? So few characteristics we've reached up till here. We've talked about gymnosperms, that they are naked seeded and they are plants without flowers. They are 70 genera, around 900 species, a small group, right? And then they are more ancient than the angiosperms, and they were found around 200 million years ago. They were found to be the dominant vegetation on earth, but as for now, the present times, they are dominant only in the cold areas, where their only source of water is rain and snow, right? Other than that, we see that these are woody plants. They are perennial and they live for long years, right? Thousands of years, 6,000, 12,000 years. So they are perennial, they are woody plants, and we can say that their sizes are found in variety of sizes, right? So they are perennial. They are perennial, right? Live for many years. They are woody, right? Then variety is seen, right? Variety is seen. What do I mean by the variety? Here is they are found in different sizes, right? So they are found as bushes, small in size, right? Then they are medium sized, right? So little taller, and then they are tall trees, very tall trees, right? And here we see that the tallest gymnosperm that has been found on earth is the tree known as the redwood, right? The redwood tree, it is also known as sequoia, right? So the tallest gymnosperm is the redwood tree or sequoia. Redwood tree. I am writing it also with a red color, right? So redwood tree, also known as sequoia, right? So that is the redwood tree, right? And of course, as I told you, that the plants are absent. So this is the tallest tree that is known, and flowers are absent. The ovules, that is the seed, they are not enclosed with the ovary wall, that is the fruit. I hope you know the difference, that before fertilization the seed is called ovule, and before fertilization the fruit is called the ovary or the ovary wall, right? So pre-fertilization, ovule without the ovary wall, and post-fertilization, the ovules after fertilization, they become seeds and the ovary becomes the fruit. So post-fertilization, seeds without the fruit, right? So they are naked seeded, right? And when they are naked seeded, then we can say that the seeds, they remain exposed both before and after fertilization, right? Then we come to the roots. We are talking about the morphology here. So we come to the roots now. The roots that are found in gymnosperms are tap roots, right? So they are tap roots. They have tap roots. I hope you remember what is a tap root. The primary root bearing secondary roots. From the secondary we can see tertiary roots coming out, right? So that is the tap root system, right? Then there are special characteristics found even in these tap roots, right? In gymnosperms. Now what are the special features here in the roots is that there are some genera in gymnosperms which show a symbiotic relationship. Roots, we are talking about roots just now, right? So the roots, they show a symbiotic relationship, right? We have already discussed about the symbiotic relationship, that means there are two organisms which are living together, and both these organisms, they benefit each other, right? So they stay together and both benefit each other, they don't harm each other, right? So we see a symbiotic relationship even in the roots of gymnosperms, right? And this symbiotic relationship we see is that they form mycorrhiza. If you remember, when we talked about fungi, we talked about mycorrhiza, and we said that there are a group of fungi which form a symbiotic relationship with higher plants. Higher plants means better developed or more complex plants, right? So gymnosperm is a higher plant, right? So a symbiotic relationship between the fungus and roots of gymnosperms form the mycorrhiza, right? Now how do they benefit each other? They are showing a symbiotic relationship. If they are showing a symbiotic relationship, that means they should be benefiting each other, right? So the fungus, it provides nitrogen, it derives the nitrogen from the soil and provides the nitrogen to the plant, right? So the fungus, it provides nitrogen, whereas the gymnosperm, that is the plant, the host plant, we can say, it provides food, or we can say nutrition, food and shelter to the fungus. That is how they both benefit each other, right? And this kind of a relationship is seen in pinus. Pinus is an example, right? Mycorrhiza is seen in pinus. Pinus is an example of pine trees, you must have heard, right? So the scientific name is pinus, right? So mycorrhiza is an example of the tree pinus. Other than that, we also see that there are another type of roots present which are known as coralloid roots. Coralloid root, right? So the other is the coralloid roots. Coralloid root. Now, coralloid root is also a symbiotic relationship, and this relationship is between nitrogen fixing bacteria and the gymnosperm, right? So the example of coralloid root is Cycas, and this is a symbiotic relationship between nitrogen fixing bacteria and the roots of gymnosperms, right? So obviously the nitrogen fixing bacteria, they provide nitrogen to the cycas, and cycas in turn, which is a gymnosperm, provides food and shelter to the bacteria, right? So these are small specialized roots. These coralloid roots are small roots. They are specialized because they are specialized to perform this function, right? That is why we say they are specialized roots, right? Next we come to the stem. So the stem of the gymnosperms may be branched or may be unbranched also, right? So it may be branched like in pinus, or it may be unbranched like in cycas. Now why do we study about pinus and cycas a lot is because These are the main plants that are studied in gymnosperms, and based on these two plants there are many questions that are asked in the medical examination, right? So whatever we study, these little things that you are studying, these are questions are framed from these only in the medicals, right? So a branched gymnosperm is Pinus and unbranched is Cycas, right? Then mycorrhiza is a symbiotic relationship which is seen in Pinus, and coralloid root is a symbiotic relationship that is seen in Cycas, right? So you need to remember these differences, right? Next we come to we've done the roots and now we've done the stems, and next we come to the leaves, right? So the leaves of gymnosperms may be simple or it may be compound leaves also, right? So the leaves may be simple or compound. I hope I need not tell you the difference between a simple leaf and a compound leaf. You've been doing it right away since class 6, right? So, and still if you don't know, please go through your class 6 book and you'll find out the difference between a simple and a compound leaf. Being a biology student, you've taken a biology in class 11, you should be knowing this basic difference, right? So, simple and compound leaves. Now, in Cycas we find that the leaves are pinnate. Pinnate is feather-like leaves, right? So leaves resembling a feather. So Cycas has pinnate leaves. What are pinnate leaves? Leaves resembling a feather, right? Feather of a bird, of course, right? So leaves resembling a feather. Now these pinnate leaves, they have leaflets on either side of a common axis, right? So for example, this is the leaflets on either side of the common axis, right? So these are the leaflets present on either side of the common axis. So that is a feather-like appearance, right? And this persists or it remains for a few years in the plant, that is Cycas. Now leaves in gymnosperms, all over we are talking about, they have needle-like leaves also, right? So the leaves in gymnosperms, they are well adapted to extremes of climatic conditions, right? So whether they are well adapted to different temperature ranges, they are well adapted to humidity, and also they are well adapted to wind, right? So in conifers, the needle-like leaves, I told you that some of the gymnosperms, they have needle-like leaves, right? Different type of leaves they have, and these leaves are well adapted. Well adapted means in different environmental conditions, in the extremes of conditions, they can still survive. That is what we mean by well adapted, and they can still prepare food, right? So in conifers, we find that the leaves of conifers are needle-like leaves, right? So if the leaves are needle-like, if you remember Cycas, right? So they have thorns present, isn't it? And when you studied Cycas, your teacher must have told you that these thorn-like structures are modified leaves, which reduces the surface area of the leaf, right? Similarly here in conifers also, needle-like leaves are there, and when a leaf is needle-like, just see, if the leaf is this thin, needle-like, and if a leaf, normal leaves that we talk about, if you look at the surface area of both the leaves, you find that the surface area of the needle-like leaf is much reduced as compared to the surface area of this simple leaf, right? That means if the surface area of a leaf is large, then the number of stomata present on the leaf because of the large surface area would also be large, right? Now if now we come to the needle-like leaf, right? The surface area of this needle-like leaf is reduced, right? It is less, and so the stomata present would also be few as compared to the stomata of a normal leaf. Right? Now, if the stomata are also few in number, that means loss of water is not there much. Right? So, this is one kind of an adaptation where we know that since they are found in the cold regions, and for the water source, they only depend on rain and snow. So they get less water. Right? So they cannot afford to lose too much of water through transpiration. So this adaptation, it protects the plant from losing too much of water. Right? So needle-like leaves, which reduces the surface area, also helps to reduce water loss. Right? Then the next characteristic we find is that they are heterosporous. Right? I am sure this term is not new to you. They are heterosporous. Hetero means different, sporous means spores. That means their spores are different in morphology. Morphologically, structure-wise, the spores are different, and that is why they are heterosporous, right? So they produce, of course, the spores that are produced are haploid. The spores are haploid, right? And then being haploid, there are two types of spores that are produced, and the two spores produced are microspores and megaspores. Now look at the name, right? Two types of spores. These spores are microspores and megaspores, right? So from the word itself we can differentiate how they are different. Micro means small, mega means big, right? So small spores and big spores, already we know the difference from the name itself, right? So there are two different types of spores, right? Microspores and megaspores. Microspores are small spores and megaspores are spores that are larger in size. Now these spores are formed inside a sporangia, right? So let's say if this is the sporangia, right? Then the spores are formed, these microspores and megaspores, depending upon whether they are on a female or a male plant, they are formed inside the sporangia, right? So we will say that this is the sporangia, right? And inside the sporangia are the spores present, right? So where are these spores formed? They are formed inside the sporangia, right? Now where are these sporangia present? These sporangia are present on sporophylls, right? If you remember in the previous class we talked about sporophylls. What are these sporophylls? They are leaf-like structure, the leaves that bear fertile leaves, we can say. They are fertile leaves. Why fertile leaves? Because they bear spores, right? So they bear sporangia. Inside the sporangia are present the spores, right? So where are the sporangia present? They are formed inside the sporophylls, right? Sporophylls, they contain sporangia, and the sporangia contains the spores, right? Now since the sporangia are borne on the sporophylls, we will see that there is a special arrangement of sporophylls found in the gymnosperms. The sporophylls, they are arranged in such a way that they form a lax. You'll come across the term lax in your book, right? So they form a structure known as lax, right? Now what is this lax? This is nothing but it is a simple strobilus or a cone, right? So another term given to it is lax. It is a strobilus or a cone, right? So cone-like structure, the whole cone or the whole strobilus or the lax is made up of sporophyll. So these sporophylls, they are arranged, you know, they form a kind of a pattern. They are arranged in such a way that they form a compact structure which is known as strobili or a strobilus right? The singular term is strobilus and the plural is strobili, right? So they form a strobilus or a cone, right? Now we come to the next part. We've reached up till strobili, right? So what we discussed just now was that the spores that are present, they are heterosporous, micro and megaspores. The spores are formed inside the sporangia. The sporangia, they are born on the sporophylls. Born on the sporophyll means they are formed on the sporophylls. The sporophylls, they are arranged in a particular pattern, right? They form a compact structure which is known as the strobilus or the cone or the lax, right? Now, strobili, we know, bearing, strobilus is clear to you, cone, bearing microsporophylls, and microsporangia are known as the male strobili, right? So if in a strobilus are present the microsporophyll bearing microsporangia, so this microsporangia will ultimately bear microspores, right? So then this strobilus will be called a male strobilus, right? So this strobilus would be called a male strobilus, right? If it bears microspores. I hope this is clear. The heterosporous, two different strobili, right? So one is the strobili bearing microsporophyll, right, which contains microsporophyll leaves, right? Microsporangia are the structures that contain the spores, so the microspores, right? So the microspores are there, so they are called the male strobili, right? Then comes the macrospores or the megaspores, right? So the microspore is the male gametophyte here, right? So the male gametophyte generation, this microspore, which is a highly reduced structure. Highly reduced means they're very small in size, right? Highly reduced. Highly reduced, right? We're talking about the microspores. They're highly reduced in size. Means they're very small in size and they are confined to a limited number of cells only, right? Confined to a limited number of cells means they're made up of a limited number. If we are saying limited number means they're very, very few number of cells. That is why they're very small. And these reduced, this is the male gametophyte, right? And write it here. It is the male gametophyte. Highly reduced, made up of limited number of cells, and this male gametophyte is known as the pollen grain, right? So here this is known as the pollen grain, right? So ultimately we can say that pollen grains are formed on the male strobilus, right? So these are reduced, very small in size, made up of limited number of cells, and these are the male gametophyte, which are the pollen grains. Now the development of these pollen grains, like what does it mean by the development of the pollen grains? Formation of all structures inside the pollen grains, then later on formation of the pollen tube, etc. Right? So all the development, all that is required for fertilization, right? All the development takes place within the microsporangia, right? Right? I drew the microsporangia. I told you it would be something like this. Inside this are the pollen grains or the microspores, right? So the development of the pollen grain, it takes place inside the microsporangia, right? So cones bearing microspores are known as male strobilus, right? Now we come to the cones bearing megasporophylls, right? So we come to the next one, cones bearing megasporophylls. Right, so we're talking about now the megasporophylls. Right, what is a sporophyll? A leaf-like structure. These sporophylls are arranged in a particular pattern to form a cone. Right, so we can show you these are the sporophylls that are there. They are arranged to form a cone. Right, so the cones bearing megasporophylls with ovules or megasporangia. So megasporophyll will bear megasporangia or ovules. Right? Inside the ovules are the egg cells present. Right? So megasporangia, these are called the macrosporangia, or they are the female strobili. Right? So this is known as the female strobili. Right? So megasporophylls bearing megasporangia, obviously, see, pollen grains are very, very small in size, they are microspores. Right? Ovules are bigger in size, they are megaspores. Right? So megasporophyll bearing megasporangia or ovules, they are termed as the female strobili. You know what? Later on, after the development only, it is seen whether it is a male strobilus or the female strobilus. Right. Now, these plants in gymnosperms, they may be unisexual or they may be bisexual. Right. So unisexual bearing only one sexual organ, either male or female. Right? They may also be bisexual, bearing both the male and the female. Right? Now in the medicals, there is a question that is asked that Pinus is a unisexual gymnosperm or a bisexual gymnosperm. So we quickly just see this, that unisexual is Ficus and bisexual is Pinus. As I told you, that questions related to Ficus and Pinus are asked in the medicals. Right? So Pinus is a bisexual plant. That means it bears the male as well as the female strobilus on the same plant, and Ficus is a unisexual plant. Right? Now the megaspore mother cell, which is a part of the nucellus inside the ovule. Right? There is nucellus that is found, and out of that there is one megaspore mother cell, and it is protected by, the whole nucellus is protected by integuments or layers. Right? So when they are protected with integuments and layers, we give it a term as ovule. So what is an ovule? Ovule is protected by integuments. It is a structure which has integuments, and inside the integuments are present the cells, the nucellus and the megaspore mother cells. Right? Ovules are born on the megasporophylls on the female cone. Right? Now what does this megaspore mother cell do? Right? So megaspore mother cell. So if this is the megaspore mother cell, then this megaspore mother cell, it undergoes reduction division. Right? As a result, it forms 4 spores which are haploids. Out of these 4, 3 degenerate. Right? Degenerate means they get mixed up with the nucellus, and so what is left now is just one haploid spore. This is left. Right? Now this undergoes further development. This develops into the female gametophyte, that bears archegonia. Right, so what will happen to this? This will develop into the female gametophyte bearing archegonia. Right, archegonia contains eggs. Right. So unlike the bryophytes and the pteridophytes that we've studied, we saw that the male and the female gametophyte in bryophytes and pteridophytes are independent, right? They live independently. But here in gymnosperms, we see that the gametophyte, whether it is the male gametophyte or the female gametophyte, they do not have free living existence. They cannot live free, they do not live free. So that means they are found inside, they are retained on the sporophyte, right? So they remain within the sporangia and the sporangia is retained on the sporophyte. So at the time of fertilization, what happens? Sexual reproduction, the pollen grains, they are released, right, and are carried away by various agents of pollination. Air is one of them. The air currents, they carry the pollen grains, right, and when these pollen grains, when they come in contact with this ovule, then what happens? Which are born on the megasporophyll, then fertilization takes place, right. As a result of fertilization, zygote is formed, right. The zygote further divides to form an embryo, right, and this embryo leads to the formation of ovules, which further turn into the seeds, right. So the ovules, after fertilization, they are there, they turn into seeds, right, and seeds are formed. So that's about the characteristics of the gymnosperms, and we will quickly go through the economic importance of gymnosperms. Right, so gymnosperms are also, they have a lot of value and very valuable group of plants. So they also share a great economic importance with the other groups of plants that we have studied up till now. Right, so we'll just quickly go through the economic importance. Right, so the first thing is that they have a great food value, right, a great food value. They are used as foods, right, cycads. So the plants that belong to the cycads, cycas, etc., they are a good source of starch, right, they are good source of starch. You've eaten sago, right, everybody, most of you must have eaten this, and you'll find out what this is, right, sago. And I'm telling you, many of you, if you're fond of it, you've eaten it in some or the other form, right. So sago is one food that is rich in starch, and it is, we get this from the family of cycas, right. So there are seeds that contain starch, and these seeds are eaten also, right, they are cooked before they are eaten, right. Other than that, seeds of pinus, everybody has eaten chilgoza, right, chilgoza, very, very expensive, right, and not very, since it is so expensive, so not very easy to buy, and even when we buy it, we don't buy it in a huge quantity, right. So it's a dry fruit, right, chilgoza is a dry fruit, which is the seeds of pinus, right. So people like the taste of these seeds, so they're rich in, they're very good, we can say, a good dry fruit, right. It provides you a lot of energy also, so chilgoza. Then young leaves of cycas are also cooked as vegetable in some parts of the world. You know, young leaves are not that bitter, right. So basically what happens is, the fully grown old leaves, they taste a little bitter, right. So young leaves of cycas are eaten in some parts of the world. They're cooked as vegetables. Like we eat many leafy vegetables, so the leaves of cycas are also eaten as a vegetable. Other than that, it has medicinal value. Right, so it has medicinal value also, right? They are used as an anti-cancer drug, right? So the extracts of certain plants, they are used for chemotherapy, right? So generally they are used for chemotherapy, and Taxol is the chemical that is formed, which is basically an extract, and that is used for chemotherapy, so an anti-cancer drug. Other than that, they are used as timber, good value for lightweight furniture, right? Lightweight furniture, right? Other than that, they use as plywood, right? For packing cases, right? Matchsticks, right? The matchsticks are also made from the gymnosperms, right? The railway sleepers are also made from gymnosperms, right? Then we see the fourth one I write here, paper, right? So paper is also the woods of these gymnosperms are used to manufacture paper, and then resins are an extract which solidifies when they come in contact with air, right? So it solidifies. So for injuries, this resin is used so that it solidifies. It plugs in the injury, right? It has a water retention capacity also, and it is also used as an antiseptic, right? So that's about the economic importance or the economic value of gymnosperms. At the end of the lesson, you have questions. Please do those questions, learn them nicely, and in the next video, I will shoot the video for angiosperms, and after you study angiosperms, then you can carry on with the home assignment that you will get.